How's everybody doing today? Happy Easter to those that are faith and are followers. Resurrection Day for all the people that sent my text chain and my family. So happy Easter to everybody. This past Sunday was Easter. And we had a lot going on this week. And my Michigan Wolverines pulled off the national championship, NCAA basketball, men's basketball. Very, very proud. And what a heck of a run for those guys. It's kind of why I'm a little delayed doing this. I figured I would wait until, we got some results after Monday instead of doing it Monday morning like I typically will. But a lot of stuff to talk about today. We're really excited about the Wolverines. We have the Masters coming up. Had some good experiences with my kids at spring break, so I have the kids here. If you hear any noise around the podcast, it's probably my kids running around or doing something. So trying to keep them quiet, this morning while I get this done. But I had a great time. Did go to church. Haven't been going to church a lot lately for Easter. Easter's the day that I don't like to go to church. I grew up, at a small church in Lansing, Friendship Baptist Church, and my mom taught Sunday school there, so I was there quite a bit. Had to be there for Sunday school, for mom's Sunday school classes, for early church, for afternoon church, and Sunday was always the day where the non-members and the non-people came. So I would, too busy. I'll come later. But now I found myself in that boat. And ironically, my daughter wanted to go to a specific church. She's been going to ever since she was in middle school. My oldest, Ava, she's 14. And she's been going to this church when she stays with her mom and asked me to take her and wanted to go. So we went and we had a great time. Felt good to be in that setting. Haven't been in a while, probably since my divorce. But it brings back memories. It's part of my foundation. Like I said, growing up in the church, mom and dad, grandparents, having faith is something that's important. And Easter's one of those times that always come to mind. Of course, I didn't put on the loud canary yellow suit like I used to back in the day, or the baby blue powder suit from Dumb and Dumber for Easter. But do want to wish everybody well that does celebrate. We are going through a tough time, and having a faith right now is probably very important, especially how separate we feel as a country and with wars and other things going on. So I just want to pray for everybody, and hopefully you guys had a great Sunday as well. But let's dive into this, man. As you know, DNA Golf Instruction, go to the website, dnagolfinstruction.com. Interested in lessons in West Michigan, any questions, want to know about our mission and sort of what we're all about, please use that as a resource. This is the time to book your appointments. It's going to get busy. As soon as that weather breaks, I don't have a lot of free time. So make sure you're using those resources, and we will be better about returning phone calls this year, have a little more structure. So we're excited about the season. So today we're going to start off by talking about NCAA basketball. And so we'll get to the Michigan Wolverines here in a minute. But we're going to talk about, the championship games, the Final Four games, and sort of what happened this past week. Got Mr. Black Panther today. It's kind of like my victory cup, and then I wore my varsity jacket too. You got to have your varsity jacket on when your team plays. So we got our DNA varsity jacket on, as tribute to the winning basketball varsity team at the University of Michigan. But let's start off by talking about the women. And congratulations to UCLA for pulling out a kind of an unexpected victory this year. Weren't on my radar. I've watched them play in the Big Ten and knew they were good. I mean, they were the best Big Ten team. They killed my Wolverines late in the season. And you could just tell with the size that they had, the senior leadership. And I didn't know a lot about those seniors. But it was amazing to watch. South Carolina got outplayed. And you see this, I think you saw it with Michigan this year on the men's side. But with the women's side, when a team is figured out or when a team is better, there tends to be a larger margin. And, UCLA controlled that game from the opening tip. And I think, Coach Staley knew she was sort of out of it, even in that first half there. That doesn't mean they won't be back. And, as talented as, South Carolina and UConn, they just retool, restack. And now with the transfer portal, they'll even get kids that way. LSU is another one of those teams. I don't really care for their style. I like Flo, but I don't know. Got mixed feelings about their coach. But she's scrappy, and her players like her, so there goes that argument again. But they more parity in women's basketball probably than ever before, and it's still not that many teams that can actually win. So, turning on the TV, okay, South Carolina's in it. Oh, they're probably going to do what they normally do. They got all these seniors, and they have great transfers, and all these players that can help them dominate. That I sort of assumed, and in sports we never want to assume, right? David and Goliath. There's a lot of examples of why we don't assume that the favorite is always going to win. And this was one of those times. And you could see it very early on. The senior play, the way that the five, members on that team, when they were on the court, were just communicating. And there were only a few times when South Carolina sort of changed the tone of the game. And it didn't last very long. But that being said, Don Staley's team is very, very dangerous. They got the power forward down there that's a sophomore. She'll be back. They threw in the 6'7" girl. I don't see it in my notes here. I thought I had it. But they competed. They played well. They didn't quit. And then number 44 as well for South Carolina. I think she's a freshman, and I think she's playing a little bit ahead of the curve with some of the things that she did in the Final Four game and the Elite Eight game. Sort of came in with instant points, and they're dangerous. And I think that they have another top recruit coming in, another senior power forward type body that they'll have coming in. So, they'll be fine. They'll be back. We won't, miss them. And shouts out to Coach Don Staley too for her professionalism, understanding the moment and how women's sports are growing. She was very, very nice to the UCLA coach, gave her a nice big hug, congratulated her, talked about, her road to success and the things that she's done, and not just for herself or her program, but for the game. And I thought that was wonderful, especially after dealing with Gino, in the game before, and the blow up and whatever foolishness he had going on. So it was good to see that Don, did that. Just touching on that real quick. I mean, Gino, that's just, it's ridiculous how he behaved. Shouts out to Don again. I mean, she was a professional. As a minority, and sometimes I wonder, women as well, like when I saw the exchange the first time, you see Gino going up to her and mouthing off saying, and she's like, what did I do wrong? Almost in a in a subordinate way, without ever doing anything wrong with a fellow colleague, right? But she was taking that side of it, the side of forgiveness and respect, and not trying to rock the boat. I'm sorry. What did I do, Gino? What did I do? And he's mouthing off, right? And come to find out that she did shake hands with him prior to the game. She shook hands with everyone on his staff. I did see a clip of him going, right before the game started. He did go to the box, and I think that might have been what the excuse that he was trying to use at that moment. And then there was the incident of the player tearing her, Sarah Strong in her shirt. She ripped it herself. And I get it, man. You're on a team. You use everything, even the stuff that's not usable. You try to use it. I saw it last night with UConn, and McKinney, they were trying to tie him up late, and he's using that pivot foot, and they were checking to see if he threw an elbow. Well, no, Coach Hurley, he didn't throw an elbow. I see where you're reaching and why you're going there. So I get that, but there needs to be some sense of professionalism, and he needs to be accountable. The apology he gave was horrible. And his behavior just wasn't warranted, especially in that situation. And if you go look at the tapes from last year when he's on the winning side, it wasn't like that. He was all, give me a big old hug, right? And walking up as the, on the winning side, and that reminded me of past with Gino, right? And he's been nasty before in the past and talked about how he didn't really want to be friends with other coaches, and good old Pat Summitt with UT, University of Tennessee. He sort of took her reign, right? Changing of the guard. But I remember clips of him talking about, well, I don't want to be friends with them. I don't want to eat lunch with them. I just want to beat them, right? Like he didn't want to be cordial, and he was pretty open about it. And I think it's the same in this situation. Now you have Don Staley coming in, whose program has really controlled Gino. I think they've won 5 out of the last 7 or 8, or something like that. But she's starting to have his number a little bit, and he can't stop her with the X's and O's. So his frustration is there, and it's a changing of the guard. Now Don's not like him. She sees a bigger picture in trying to grow women's basketball. But I think that he has a bitter element, and also as we age, we all I'm mid-40s, and I'm already changing. I can't imagine I'll be in my mid-60s. But it was poor judgment on his part, and he's not backing down from his feelings. So hopefully over time he'll be able to do that. But I think it's ironic too that UCLA ends up pulling it out. After all that foolishness and all of us thinking that the UConn South Carolina game would be where the winner came from. And that just wasn't the case. And then the other side with Texas and UCLA, I'm cheering for the young lady, number 35. I can't remember her name offhand here. Somehow I missed the whole segment of my notes in my write-up here. Maybe they're somewhere further back. But the number 35 for Texas really struggled. Their coach, I didn't see a lot of X's and O's and a lot of game planning that I thought was exceptional out of them. And they were missing everything. It was mid-range jump shot after mid-range jump shot, and they just kept missing. And I thought they needed a play to work to the hole or do something, and it wasn't working. But also, with big old Lauren Betts down there with her 6'7" frame and all the seniors for UCLA, I think it was more the players making Texas look bad than anything else. And they dominated that game. So, the night prior to the national championship game for the women, I'm thinking, UCLA looked tough. I know this Betts kid is good, and they have good guard play. I pay attention to coaches, and I see some X's and O's and changes within the structure of the game, right? So, who knows? But South Carolina has everybody. Forgetting that Chloe Kitts is injured, right? So they're lacking a little bit of guard play there. And to Coach Staley's, own credit and words, she talked about the team not being that good and needing to improve on some things. But by the time the end of the year came and they lost to Texas, I think in the SEC tournament there, they learned something from that and started to take off and get some steam. So really cool to watch. I mean, like I said, I don't want to say Don gave up on the game, but, about halfway through that third quarter when she put the tall freshman in from France, she's starting to think about the next step and the young players and the next move and preparing for the next thing. And I think her recruits were at the game, and I really love how she runs her program. And she does it her own way. And now maybe UCLA is another one that will be up there. Michigan had a good season, Big Ten basketball season, ranked high, not enough size yet, but more and more teams, especially with NIL. Let's see what happens here. It'll be interesting to see. But, it was cool to see, Gabriela Jaquez, whose brother plays for Miami. She's also a young child that played softball in college and played in the College World Series a few years ago. And wasn't really highly recruited in basketball and had to go on a plane to Oakland to play for a team, a little further away from her in order to get recognition and be able to make that next step. So 2-star athlete, mom and dad were both in the crowd, a lot of that, right? And coach loves that. A lot of support from family. And she played outstanding along with all the other seniors. Lauren Betts was outstanding. They just fed her in that post and she was unstoppable. And then the guard play of Kiki Rice and Leaguer Walker, Charlize Leaguer Walker, loved her demeanor even after making a mistake. She would make a mistake. I think she had a turnover. Oh, that was my fault. Pat it on her chest, and then it was over. And I saw a lot of that from Marine from the Augusta Amateur, women's am, where there was a smile on her face even in the hard times, and she was enjoying herself out there, which helped her perform the way she needed to perform. So shouts out to UCLA. You earned it. The seniors scored the last 173 points of the season. Senior-dominated team. And, although it seemed like a shocker at first, it really wasn't. Like, they dominated that game, and it was kind of cool to see. But on the men's side, hail to the victors, hail to the victors. And we enjoyed winning. I enjoyed watching. And I brought some stuff in here to let you guys see how crazy this gets for me, man. But getting to the games first here, I got to give it to Coach Hurley. I was kind of on him this last couple of weeks. He was getting on my nerves. He's a quirky guy. He's relentless when it comes to the referees. Like, there's something wrong with him. Like, every call. Boy, all these facial expressions. His mouth is this way. His eyes are over here. He's just so animated. But he's confident. And I have to remind myself he's, second generation basketball coach and player, right? So there's a lot to him, kind of like the Harbaughs, the Mannings. There's a lot of families we can throw under these types of umbrellas. And like I said, his quirkiness was getting on my nerves. I didn't like after when Mullins hits the game-winning shot. If you look at Coach, right after he hits it, he gives this guy a hug, he celebrates for a second, and then he stares at the ref, and he's like head-to-head with the ref. Doesn't say anything, just head-to-head with him, and then backs off, right? Because he's saying he's making bad calls the whole game. And I'm like, this is crazy, man. We don't need that. He should have been fined for that too, actually. But the more I watched and paid attention, he loves his kids. That's the big thing. He's superstitious. All of you golfers out there are superstitious. I know guys that put 3 tees in one pocket, the ball mark in the other, and they have to play like that or else they can't play golf. So I appreciate his quirkiness. And then I caught a tail end of his interview the day before the final game, and the Fab Five was walking right past them, and Jalen gives him dap, and he shakes their hands, and he's, oh man, the Fab Five, and oh man, and then he whispers something in Weber's ear, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I don't hate him anymore, right? Yeah, he showed my guys some love. He acknowledged who they were. I remember him as a player. My brother used to make me watch a lot of Hurley stuff, man. Probably his dad's stuff, like basketball drills. I even had the little platform shoes with the base on them, right? That helped you get the calf strength up. And I feel like the Hurleys were promoting that as well. But they had a lot of basketball coaching videos. Say something in the comments if you were one of the people that used to use those Hurley videos. My brother Jay used to have me working on that stuff. So, like I said, I backed off, and I really do appreciate him as a person. He seems to be a good husband. I say seem because we don't know these people firsthand. Coaches, I feel a little bit better about because they're in front of us more, and they have players that now can make statements about them. But he seems to be a good father. He seems to be a good person. I love that he has dad there every game. I love mom's energy behind this. Even Hurley, his brother, can't imagine being the second best basketball player in the family, right? And but still being good and finding your calling later in life, which is what happened with Dan Hurley. So all around, man, I backed off on his quirkiness, and I still think he could be a little nicer to the refs, but I get it. It's a game of politics and process, and you got to play the game, and he's willing to play it. So I really enjoyed watching our team beat his team, and that championship pedigree, and they made it the game that they wanted to make it, and it almost cost us. No threes in the first half. Thank the Lord for 22 paint points in the first half. But they made it scrappy. They made it the game they wanted. Now, I'm watching that in the first half. I'm like, wow, they made it the game they wanted, and we're still kind of dominating with everyone struggling, right? Yaxel was really trying to get his feet together. He couldn't. Shots weren't falling. Cadeau gets into foul trouble. Mara had 3 or 4 possessions where I thought he could have just turned quickly and went up, but he looked like he was hesitant and slow. So, they did what they needed to do. It's funny, the Caravan kid actually reminded me of a modern day Christian Laettner. Like, he was a smart player, a heady player. Didn't see a lot of up and down in regard to emotion. But a lot of Christian Laettner vibes, except the fact that he was just running around every screen and pick, and the motion was good, and he'd get that shot at the top of the key, and it was almost lights out when he did that. So really, really enjoyed watching a senior that's won 2 championships, and we earned that victory. But even in saying that, we earned it. It did not feel like 1989. 1989, I'm 10 years old, and that was a close game with Seton Hall where Ramil Robinson has to make 2 free throws to win the game. Nail biter, right? I've never been this comfortable watching Michigan sports. Scoring 90 points a game, winning by margins of 10 or more in each game. And that doesn't mean that they couldn't improve. They were doing this with the struggles, with what I call golf struggles, the same struggles in anything. Things were not going their way. It'd be the equivalent of starting off bogey, 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 right? But when you got a skill set and start off with 3 bogeys, it doesn't matter. Those birdies are out there somewhere, so your mind is okay with that. If you're a person that doesn't make birdies, par's the lowest, now you're starting to freak out because that score is going up, right? So I really loved the adjustments, the ability to play in multiple styles. Really did it against Tennessee. No, not Tennessee. Was it Tennessee or Texas? No, it was Tennessee. Barnes always gets me confused. I can't remember if he went from Texas to Tennessee, Tennessee to Texas. But he was at Tennessee. Our style, we played the style necessary. And that's where Dusty May might be a problem for the rest of the world for a while here. This is year 2. And as he said, thanks to the guys last year, we learned a lot from the guys last year. They were the catalyst to get us into this position this year, right? I don't know who stays from this team. Yaxel's got to be gone. I don't know about Cadeau. Maybe he's gone. But McKinney's a freshman, so he should be there. Kaysen's coming off an injury, so we should have some guard play there. Who knows what Mara's going to do? You know, you see a lot of these big men sticking around, although he's a talented big man. So I don't know, but we trust in Dusty. Dusty, trusty Dusty. I'll make a shirt called Trusty Dusty. All right. It's like my old dusty wedge that I used to have, my old Cleveland wedge. So, man, I really enjoyed it, and you know, it was such a good feeling to hear that the fight song and to see all that maize and blue everywhere. And I brought a couple of things into the studio today. You know, related to that, you know, but before I get to that, I do want to give a shout out to Terrace Reed, you know, one of our ex-players who transferred. I bet that was hard to be a part of, right? To be on a team that, you know, transferring from a team in a program that was struggling, and then in the 2 years you're gone, you know, they get back on top of the mountaintop, and you could have been a part of that, right? You could have been one of those big men, and he played really, really well this whole NCAA tournament. So I just want to give a shout out to him, and his talent shine. You could see what Juwan, what the guys were seeing out of him. You know, I think Juwan just really struggled in bringing it out of these kids, and you know, hopefully he figures it out and becomes a better coach. It was good listening to his X's and O's on the cast the other day as well. But also Caravan, Braylon Mullins, you know, shouts out to those guys, played really, really well. And you know, like I mentioned, I think that the future of Michigan basketball is bright, and boy, I was watching these two coaches thinking, man, this could happen again. I could see this happening again and again and again, right? You know, the days of the Izzos and the older coach, not that I stick around forever, Izzo, once you're there, but we're starting to get a little younger, and things are changing, and I love how we look for that future, and now kids are going to want to come to play for Dusty, and we're excited. It was cool to see the podcast, though. The Fab Five cast on True TV. Stayed away from it at first just because I didn't want it to jinx the game. I got this, jinx of the Bambino type of thing, like the Red Sox had before they won their national championship. And I was wondering if these guys were the reason, something that happened with the program. Is that the reason why we've been struggling so much? But glad to see we're off the hump. And it was really good to see all those guys together. My heroes, man. You know, I graduated high school in 1997, and the Fab Five had a huge impact on me. The bench players on that team had an impact on me. I met some of them, you know, through camps and different things that I went to. Of course, Glenn Rice is, you know, in my mind, one of the greatest ever, right, that played for Michigan. You know, so there's a rich history here, and you know, I grew up just wanting to be like these guys, and they had so much swag and style, and the black socks and everything about them was just so cool to me. And growing up in Lansing, you know, this is Michigan State territory that I'm growing up in. It was kind of difficult to be a Michigan fan. There were others, and I stayed true to it. And, you know, I didn't know why I was a Michigan fan. I remember one time asking my dad, and he said that we were watching TV, and I saw an Anthony Carter, his helmet, and the number 1 jersey, and something about that I liked, and that made me an instant fan of them. And, you know, my dad being Cincinnati born, you know, went to Xavier and Cincinnati. That's the best basketball rivalry in the world, by the way, for all you that don't know. It's the University of Cincinnati and Xavier in Cincinnati, best rivalry, hands down. hands down. I'll argue anybody. But with that type of history from my father moving to Lansing, he supported Michigan State a lot more than Michigan, right? Because we had a lot of ties to Michigan State. Even took my brother in 1988 to the Rose Bowl when Michigan State went. Lorenzo White was the running back, I believe. And they had a event at Magic's house out there, and I got a picture. It's blurry. I got a picture of my dad on this balcony shaking hands with Magic. So that's pretty cool. But he knew I wouldn't want to go, so he took me in 91 when Bo Schembechler's last year, 91. Played USC, and another great experience, man. And to be out there with a Michigan shirt on, you know what team you cheer for. That was an away game. that's a home game, the Rose Bowl out there. But great experiences, all brought to me by my father, and him noticing that his son was really into something, and him keeping me engaged with that thing that I was into. It's something I'm trying to do better as a parent, and kind of like I mentioned earlier, my child loves her gospel music and her Christian music. So she asked me to go to church with her, and I'm like, let's go. And to see her in her element was really, really awesome. And I know that I have to keep on feeding that, and hopefully that turns into something. She might be a music director one day. Who knows? But I brought some magazines. So in this front camera here, let's go right here. This is classic stuff right here, right? Hopefully you guys can see that. So you see those shoes. Those aren't black yet. Yeah, that's how old this thing is. So this magazine is from a game against Purdue, February 7, 1993. It might have been the first time I saw him play live. But once again, man, this is where the good parenting comes in. I see a lot of it in golf, and you young guys and gals that have these parents that take you places and do things. There's so many of them I could mention. So many of them I can mention. But I'm just flipping through here, and I'm seeing all these old pictures, and even the old basketball graphics. I'm looking for a particular picture here. Got all the individual pages, and because my guy Jalen Rose, James Voskuhl, that was one of my favorite guys because he could shoot the ball, and I wanted to shoot like James Voskuhl. But is it in this one? It might not be in this one. This is the actual game one. Nope, I don't think it's in this one. I think it's in the other one. But I just brought a couple of these classic, because this is the time we show people this stuff, right? I'll probably try to zoom in on that. And then on the back, I'll leave it here. We'll just put it right here. And then on the back, you got all the players. Yep. And this is before everybody had the ball head. But you see who had the ball head. My guy Jalen started all that, right? And then he convinced everybody else to join on in. But yep, you got Ray, you got Jimmy Jackson, you got Chris Webber, you got Juwan Howard, everybody's in here. Michael Talley's up in here. So this is classic stuff. This doesn't come out unless it's time to teach the kids something, or it's or we win. That's the only time these magazines really make it out. But I gotta find one more picture here, and I'm gonna embarrass one of my club's members at Blythefield Country Club. He's in here. I'll let you guys in on it later, but I got his picture, and I'll have to show him later on. I don't think he'd mind me saying something, but I'll just double check with him. But all right, here we go. This is what I was looking for. This is when they used to get suited and booted for the pictures right there, right? So hopefully that glare ain't killing it. But those are my guys, man. The double breasted. That was the look back then. And it's starting to come back now. It's like looking at the past. But that's history. That's our history. And I feel very connected to it. especially being someone that's from Michigan. Probably should have went to Michigan. You know, and I don't know, man. In my mid-40s, you know, especially in times like this, I'm so thankful. Like, we all have trials and tribulations, and you know, life gets difficult, but you know, we have these little memories of better times or better experiences, and these wins sometimes tie it all together. You know, even my best friend growing up, Mike, we would argue about coaches. We'd argue about sports. We'd scream at the TV. We get extra excited about wins. And some of the stuff we would be doing on Michigan State's campus, wearing Michigan stuff. So, you know, shouts out to Mike. You know, we earned this one, man. And I think we got a coach of the future here. But, you know, diehard Michigan Wolverine fan. That's changed, obviously, over time. You know, these kids getting NIL money and some of this stuff. But it was really good to see the Fab Five on the podcast. You know, their little Fab Five cast. I keep calling it a podcast. To hear them talk and to get them together, right? And the things that almost broke them up. You know, Chris Webber and Jalen Rose. The questions about boosters and taking money and some of these things that we don't even worry about now with NIL. It almost ruined their relationship. So I'm glad it didn't. I'm glad that they're back together, the five of them. It's almost like Voltron. They could form Voltron again, and you know, I think it helped the program. I think it's going to be part of the program going forward. You see it with Miami University, with Ray Lewis and Reed and all the football players that come back. You know, Ohio State does a pretty good job of that with their ex-players. You know, we do a pretty good job on the football side. So now, you know, hopefully we're building you know, a new base and a new fan base of potential players that would love to play for Michigan. And, you know, this isn't a joke to me, man. You know, Jalen's one of my, you know, I'm not going to give you my NBA top players, but Jalen's on that list. And it made me think about that list and who would be my top 10 college basketball players of all times. Now, this is my list, and you know, the criteria is set by me, and it has to do with what I knew about them or their history or what I watched of them. And in some instances, it might have been someone else that brought my attention to them. So we're going to go through my top 10 list, top 10 college basketball players. And I'm going to start off with an honorable mention at 11. This person was just an outstanding point guard. His name was Chris Jackson, better known as Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. Played for LSU. And he was an excellent point guard and might have been one of the best guards ever, had he not had, you know, some controversy and made decisions that he thought were appropriate. I actually appreciate his decisions. It's good to be an individual in a world where we're getting too big and we're taking the main thought all the time. So honorable mention on my list is Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. When he played for LSU, Chris Jackson. Number 10, Isaiah Thomas, University of Indiana, coached by Bobby Knight, played for the Detroit Pistons, absolute monster, tough point guard. You'll see a theme with some of these guards here. At number 9, Larry Bird. Larry Bird, you know, obviously played against Magic, being a Lansing area kid, knew a lot about the history of that game, and always respected his game, and always had this vision of him shooting, you know, like Hoosiers in a dirt court in the back of a barn somewhere. Number 8, Chris Webber, the most powerful member of the Fab Five, had an outstanding NBA career, but as a college player, he was just nasty and intimidating, you know. So really appreciated watching him and the things that he did. At number 7, another Michigan guy, Trey Burke, won the Naismith Award. I won't say single-handedly, but with him, Coach Beeline, and that team, we changed the direction of Michigan basketball forever. So he's on my list at number 7. Number 6, this one has to do more with Dad, Oscar Robertson, the Big O, University of Cincinnati, dangerous player. Look up the stats. Look it up. That's what Dad would say. So Oscar's there at number 6. At number 5, we have Lou Alcindor, better known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar from UCLA. As Lou Alcindor, playing for the great Coach Wooden, won 3 national championships and probably would have won 4 if freshmen didn't have to sit out that first year and play junior varsity. So Lou Alcindor's at 5. At number 4, we got the great Magic Johnson. As a diehard Michigan man, love Magic because I'm from Lansing and no family members, and my mom knew his people. And once again, there's a lot of love for these Michigan schools. It's big brother, little brother. It's not enemy. So I got a lot of love for Magic, what he meant as a point guard, what I learned from him. What he meant to the world, right? Lansing gave you one of our finest. We call him Lansing's finest. That's one of the things that I always say. And there's certain moments when he's very Lansing. If you ever go look at the Dream Team footage, that's all right. That's all right. And he starts talking like that, or go get him, Clyde. You go get him, Clyde. That's Lansing to a T. So he's at number 4. At number 3. We have Allen Iverson, the tough, gritty point guard. Back then had the mini fro, but he had a huge impact on me, and I loved how he played the game and how he represented culture and had a diehard attitude, and also played for a Hall of Fame coach at Georgetown there. At number 2, might shock some people, Carmelo Anthony. In the 1 year he played, I was so amazed by this kid. The smile on his face, and just was a baller. I remember one of my buddies, Jeff, who had season tickets at Michigan State, diehard Michigan State fan. Syracuse came to play him, and he was like next to the student section, and Carmelo's like right in front of the student section. The story goes that he just sits there and he hits a 3, and then the crowd starts trying to mess with him, screaming at him. He hits another one, smiles at him. Hits another one, hit like 6 threes in a row with the zone, screaming at him, right? And told him, like, get ready for the game because that's what you're going to see, right? And, it added to that allure of who he was. So, he was a one-man wrecking crew, and it was amazing to watch him win a national championship in the form that he did. So he's my number 2 college basketball player. And at number 1, you might have guessed it, we got Jalen Rose. Jalen Rose is my number 1 basketball player from college, had the most influence on me, almost got me cut from my high school basketball team freshman year because I'm trying to play basketball like a 6'8" point guard. I wasn't 6'8". I was more like 5'10" at the time. But coach could see that I could work with both hands, could get to the lane with both hands, dribble with both. I was very, very talented, even though I was in my head about trying to be something I shouldn't have been. But the swag, the black socks, the attitude, and then the ability to execute. I learned a lot of that from him. And as a lot of later on, he went and played for Larry Bird and, built a relationship with him. So I love Jalen. I love his persistence now. I think he's a lot of the reason why the Fab Five is together. And there's a legacy and something that we need to keep out there and share. And it means so much for history and for culture and for the Michigan program. So I'm glad that they're able to highlight that now in better ways, and that the guys are all kind of around the program and around the school again. And then that name Jalen, a lot of you may not know that Jalen Rose was literally the first person named Jalen. I think his mom combined, was it James and Lenny, Uncle Lenny? Put those two together, James and the Lynn, to create Jalen, and now it's one of the most popular names in sports and in general. So we have Jalen Rose and his mother to thank for that. So shouts out to Jalen, shouts out to the Michigan Wolverines, and go blue. Excited for the future. Now, the other reason why I like this time of year, it's Masters Week. What a great time, man. You can't get any better than that. Masters Week, NCAA tournament with the Michigan victory. It makes me think of Pops a lot. I think this was his favorite time of year. He always was in, the office pool. My brother would do it every year. I do it every once in a while. I think I finished second one year. I think my brother might have won it one year. But he loved doing that pool, 4 or 5 different sheets. And I liked his pool because you pick teams based on their seed and you got points. So if they were like a 12 seed, you got more points for every win that they had versus the 1 seed. And you're just picking whatever many teams and it's a point total. So I always liked that system. And, we would go right into that to, Andre, it's Masters week. What's Tiger going to do? Right? Talked about that last time on the podcast. So I'm super excited about Masters week. And in preparation of that, I watched some of the Augusta Women's AM there at the Masters. Felt bad for the Tally, young lady Tally, in the lead in the last day. Finished second last year. One bad hole, guys. One bad hole. And I think it cost her the tournament. One high triple. And then from there, her adrenaline started flowing. Then I watched this young lady hit 4 or 5 wedge shots in a row, just flying the green. So it's tough to watch. But she kept her head up. A couple of times she walked away from her caddy, right? Which is it's okay. Caddies, we let them do that when they need to. But she left the door open for Maria Jose Marin, young lady out of Arkansas who had a smile of gold all day and very similar to that UCLA basketball team. She looked like she was in Michigan. She looked like she was in her element, even in the tough times. So it was cool to see her win. And she seemed very loose all day long. I didn't realize until she had a certain shot on the back nine with a wedge, and if it ran off too much, it could have ran into the water. She only carries a 56-degree wedge. And I started thinking about why. No 60, nothing with more loft. She's not a long ball striker. I wonder if she's using that to help her with distance in some element or some way, and just learning to manipulate her wedge, very similar to Tiger before we knew of him, when he had only one wedge and had to use it for everything, the story goes. So all around good golf. A lot of the players played well, saw a lot of birdies. And I'm curious to see if some of these pin locations will be similar to what we see at the Masters on that final Sunday from the Women's Am. So shouts out to Maria Jose Marin, and the drive, chip, and putt. I kind of had my eyes on that as well. Seeing a lot of funky swings out there. Saw a guy with a crosshand grip. He was a big, big kid. And he was crosshand grip, wrapped that thing around his head. And grip is one of those strange things we're seeing even change on tour. We're seeing a lot of adjustments and changes. I'm cautious to tell kids what to do and what not to do, especially if they have some insight as to why they're doing it. Drive, chip, and putt is my chance to see a lot of side bend, to see if there's a lot, just to see what these kids are doing nowadays to get the golf ball in the air with their brain, their thought, their body, and athleticism, which makes it very unique. And it's also good to see Rory out there. I think Bubba had his green jacket on. Condoleezza Rice is always there. And some of the other characters that we see. The Masters is ready for the tournament, ready to go. Predictions for the week, with JJ Spahn having a great last round at the Valero Texas Open this past week. I'll put his name in there. He's got one major. He's a good player, streaky kid, and when he's got confidence, he's dangerous. He's got confidence nowadays. So who knows what he can do. My picks, my top 3, I'm going to go Rory. Sometimes when you get that first Masters off your head and thinking about his past there and the fact that he's really dominated 2 other Masters and lost them, he's my favorite. If the back is okay, he's my favorite. My other 2, Brooks Koepka, I kind of want to live person. I want him to win again. I want him to win soon. I want all the live people back. just a personal preference. I think the league is better when we have all these guys competing against each other. Then I think Xander Schauffele's also starting to come into form. So those are my 3 top picks. Brooks, Xander, Rory. Second tier, I'll throw Spahn in there. Scotty Scheffler, although a little loose with the driver, and we might just be seeing the tail end of Scotty. I mean, with all that movement and how he plays, I hope he keeps it together. But we might, the number 1 ranking of some of these things, he might not dominate like he has been. Justin Thomas is another one. Justin Thomas is healthy, playing well, and can get streaky. So if he, does what he can do, I think that he'll be in the running. And then my last but not least sleeper is John Rahm, sort of hoping that he plays well. Once again, I want these live guys to come back. And the DP Tour route might not be the best route for John with all the controversy and issues he has with them, but hopefully they figure something out there. I keep thinking of the Ludwig Obergs and the Cam Youngs, but I don't think those guys are ready quite yet. I think that they have a little more work to do. Can they hold 4 rounds together? Prove me wrong. I'd love to see you guys do well. So, once again, guys, great week. Great week. Excellent to watch my team win. That doesn't happen all the time. And really excited for the Masters. It's a great time. Wish the weather could be a little warmer here in Michigan. It's not very warm. I don't like that. It's still like mid-20s to 30s today. The day after the Tuesday after the NCAA tournament final here. But it's got to warm up at some point, and I'm getting excited for the season. So I'm gonna start giving you guys more of these top 10 lists. And I got one more we're going to do today. We did the college basketball list, and because of the Masters coming up, I thought we would do the top 10, my top 10 favorite golfers. Now, we will do some best lists, best golfers. This isn't necessarily the best, but these are my favorites, my top 10 favorite golfers. And, I have an honorable mention here, too. We might keep the honorable mention, that 11th spot. And in my 11th spot, for my favorite golfers, I have Fuzzy Zoeller. I know that's a controversial answer there, or controversial spot there. But Fuzzy was my first guy that I liked on tour. I noticed where I don't have a golf club. I noticed where he put the ball close to the hosel when he teed up. I watched him hit several times on the range. Got his autograph. Heard that silly whistle that he had to stay calm at a Buick Open. And really, he had an impact on me. He was like a golf character, and I enjoy watching him play. And he could play, man. You don't win the Masters in your first time going there. That doesn't happen often. So shouts out to Fuzzy Zoeller. You are my honorable mention, 11th. In the 10th spot, Paul Azinger. Paul Azinger, there's so many things that as an instructor that I picked up on from him, from aiming at above ground targets like a bottle of water from 10 feet versus aiming at a hole, or a painter's bucket for lag putts versus aiming at a hole for improved depth perception. He talks about the black and the white side of putting, right? The two sides of the reed. And as a golfer, he didn't start playing well until college. He didn't start shooting under par until his college years. So I've always had a lot of respect for him, unorthodox swing, but could sort of hear his process. So I've always had a lot of respect for Paul Azinger. At number 9, we have Lee Elder. Lee Elder was the first African-American to play in the Masters, also the first African-American to play in the Ryder Cup. Means a lot to black golf as a person that broke color barriers and had an excellent career. So he's my number 7. At number 6, we have John Daly. He's got a drink named after him, so we got to have him on the list. But just a pure golf swing, someone who doesn't overthink the game, great tempo, picked up on the fact that he hit a lot of shots with one hand with his wedges, one-hand wedges to develop feel and trust in both limbs. And just an outstanding player, 2-time major winner. So he's at number 6. At number 5, we have Rory McIlroy. Pure golf swing, pretty determined young man, a lot of majors on that resume, and probably my favorite golf swing now on tour, now that Tiger's kind of on the back end of things. And I think he's got a bad deal dealing with this live and PGA Tour stuff and being caught in the middle of it. Might have affected his play a little bit. But he's my number 5. At number 4, we got the great Calvin Peete. Remember meeting Calvin Peete, getting his autograph. I used to wear Kangol on my head because of Calvin Peete and my father as well. So Calvin Peete, Mr. Accuracy, kept the ball fairly straight all the time. Only lost one ball, I believe, on tour out of bounds in his entire career. Played in the Ryder Cup, and one of my favorite players. At number 3, we have Freddie Couples. Freddie Couples, Mr. Smooth, boom, boom, good golf swing. Past number 1 player in the world, and I think my swing is a lot like his and how I envision swinging the golf club. And just always loved watching him play, and hits amazing shots even to this day. So he's at number 3. At number 2, guys won't believe this, but at number 2, Tiger Woods. For all the reasons that we know, best player ever to me. I got a lot of respect for what he provided and what we were able to view. My pre-shot routine, I learned from Tiger. Pumping a fist, we all learned from Tiger, right? Twirling the golf club, all these different things that we picked up from his success. So he's at number 2. But the number 1 favorite golfer for me is Payne Stewart. Payne Stewart was my absolute favorite. His attitude, the smile on his face, the knickers, the outfit, the relationship with the NFL. My dad told me that he would wear the outfit of the person that was, or whatever NFL team he was closest to. He would wear their colors on Sunday. And I would recognize that when he would be around Pittsburgh, he would have on the Pittsburgh colors. If he went to the Buick Open on Sunday, he would have on Lions colors. And I thought that was, outstanding. And then the swing was always beautiful. So I remember being very excited when he won the U.S. Open, beating Phil Mickelson. And I remember being very sad when he passed away on that plane crash. And realizing that I wouldn't see him play anymore. And that was a tough time for me as a young person. But Payne Stewart, favorite golfer of all time, and really enjoyed watching him growing up, even to the point where I pulled my socks all the way up and my sweatpants up to my knees whenever I played golf. So I had the proper look at the city courses in Lansing. So shouts out to Payne Stewart and everyone else on the list. Okay? Now, today we're going to do these segments pretty quick. We got to wrap up here and get into work because it's a Tuesday. So we'll wrap these up and sort of get out of here. But your quick tip for the week, your golf tip of the week. Let's practice with purpose. Practice with purpose, okay? So many times you'll go out to the driving range, or I'll be in a lesson with someone and I'll ask you, what are you aiming at? I don't know, somewhere out there. Let's not practice that way. Let's always make sure we have a target in mind that we're aiming at. And I'll tell you a little story that I work on with my junior golfers. I have them all look in a direction, and I say, if we were hitting a shot that way, what would you be aiming at? And someone might say, oh, I'm aiming at the tree. Okay. Then I say, someone else might say, I'm aiming at the right side of that tree. Then someone else might say, I'm aiming at the right side of the tree on that right branch. Okay, I'm going to aim the right side of the tree on that right branch. The next person might say, I'm going to look at that same right side of the tree, that right branch, but you see that little knob that sticks out where the yellow's a little bit lighter? That little spot, I'm aiming right there. That's the type of focus that we need to have, okay? The more concentrated you get your target, the tighter that deviation will be around that target. So think about practicing with purpose, making sure you're using alignment sticks to aim correctly. Keep your body parallel to your target and make that target small, not so broad. We don't want the target to be the entire range. We want it to be, at an actual target, okay? The other part to that is to remember to make golf practice like golf. So on the range, play golf holes where you hit a drive between two areas. That's your fairway. You hit an approach shot into a green. If you miss it, you have to hit a chip shot. Get in the habit of making the range into golf holes and envisioning the different courses that you play or you're going to play. First hole's a dog leg, whatever. I'm going to aim that way, play that first shot that way, go on. Same with the short game area. I think the short game areas are underutilized this time of year, where if I have you go play an 18-hole putting course, taking down a score, 2 is par for every hole, make 6 holes short, 6 holes medium length, and 6 holes long. See if you can shoot under par. That will give me an indication on your putting. We could play up and down games, 9 or 18 holes. Every ball starts on the edge of the green. We miss every green. We're chipping on. How many times do I get up and down? How many times do I 2-putt and make a bogey? How many times do I 3-putt and make a double bogey? Make it like golf. The more we make it like golf, then we'll be like the other sports that we see out there. When I play basketball, I practice on the same court that I play on. When I play football, I practice on the same course or field that I play on. Okay? Golf is one of those weird places where we have to practice outside of the realm of a golf course, and sometimes that gets confusing for people. Man, I had a great range session, but I can't take it to the course. Are you sure you had a great range session? How do you know? You weren't aiming at anything, right? So keep that in mind. Aim at something on the range, make short game golf holes, putting golf holes, or range golf holes to improve your skill and to understand where you are coming into the new season, okay? So that's your quick golf tip of the week. Let's get out there and practice. The weather should be changing soon, okay? Now, for lessons learned, I'm going to stay here for lessons learned today. And once again, I'm keeping my segments a little bit shorter today. I knew I was going to go long talking about NCAA and Masters Week and all that stuff. But for lessons learned, this one is brought to you more from my mother, Dr. Tanya A. Pillow. God rest her soul. But are you waiting for someone to rescue you? Some of us are. And in times like we're dealing with now, we're dealing with war, a poor economy, gas price, everything is tough right now. And when things are tough, are you waiting for someone to rescue you? Some of us do it in golf even, where we want the caddy, the player, the score to be manipulated, someone to go along with the cheating that we're doing. I'm going to take a 6 instead of a 7 on this hole, right? And I'm here to tell you that no one's going to rescue you. You have to rescue yourself, okay? They're not coming, right? I thought about Ludwig Oberg when he was struggling at the Players. And, as things get worse, or the young girl Tally at the Masters this past week at the Amateur here, when things get tough, you have 2 choices. You can either run, hide, and act like it's not there, or you can face it head on and learn something from it. And we have to be more willing to do that. We have to be more willing to step up for ourselves and do the right things for ourselves and not expect others to necessarily help. As a minority, sometimes I'll fall into that boat. There are tough situations that all of us have to deal with. And sometimes you want to make excuses, for where you are. Sometimes it's legit, but sometimes, there are things at your disposal you can do. I think my job is to focus on what I can control. So I remember a story of my mom, and I can't remember why I was talking to her, but something was going wrong that I didn't like, and I wanted to talk to her about it. And I told her about it, and the first thing she said, probably 12 years old at the time, she said, "Poor, pitiful you." I'm like, "But Mom, poor, pitiful you. Poor, pitiful you." And that was her way of letting me know that, I have to figure this out on my own. She cannot help me with this one, right? And that always played, and I do that with my children too sometimes. We talk about poor, pitiful you, and don't be boo-boo. Don't be like boo-boo the fool. And in those conversations, they're supposed to figure out what they can do, what skill set do they have that they could dig into to figure out a solution to this problem, to be solution oriented. Okay. I think that's important. I think that we all have way more ability than we let on. And sometimes when we're sad, we forget that and we just want to vent and we just want to say things. And that's okay. But after the venting is over, we have to remember to go back to our skill set, to step out there and remember no one's saving us and that we've got to be our best, not just for the world, but also for us. Okay. It reminds me of that old Cortez, battle story of the fleet that lands all their boats and they're outnumbered, right? There's 500 of them and they're coming into land of thousands and thousands of people. And the captain burns their boats. Why did he burn their boats? There is no second option. We can't run. So we're only going to focus on what we have to do, and that's win this war, okay? So your lessons learned is to remember that no one's coming to save you and that you have a skill set that you can use to get out of anything, and I believe in you, and I want you to remember that you control everything and you have the power, okay? So that's our lessons learned segment for this week, and I saw a lot of that. I saw a lot of that from winners. I saw a lot of that from losers. I saw a lot of that from people taking things in their own hand and trying to do their best with it. And sports is one of those places where we can find examples of that. I request that you go find some examples of that in the sports and the programming that you watch. Okay? Now, last but not least, for the Golf Tech Corner. And this is a cool one. This is one I'm really curious to get your opinions on. I like music. I listen to a lot of hip hop music. I listen to a lot of R&B, Earth, Wind and Fire, everything. I listen to everything. Temptations. That was my dad's group, so I gotta get my Temptations in. Jade. So I listen to a lot of music. And I'm starting to see way more music on the golf course. Even on our trip to Lake Nona, my boss Juan put on his music, and I don't really take a device out with me typically. But who listens to music on the golf course? That's my first question. With Golf Tech, we now have these speakers, these Bluetooth speakers that go right on your golf cart, can hook into the radar screens that you have on some of these carts, these digital screens that are on it, if you don't have a speaker, and you can play whatever music you want. I think we're about half and half right now. Some people love it, some people hate it. I'm indifferent. I want you to enjoy your golf however you need to enjoy your golf. And I tend to not like the cussing and the bad words, especially if kids are around. But normally music can stay within your group at most facilities and within your golf carts, especially if you're being respectful. So I want to encourage it. I like the music. It makes a lively atmosphere, memorable experience. When you hear a song that you like, it may help you play a certain way or get out of a bad hole or a bad mood. So what do you guys think? Should it be allowed on the golf course, or should we restrict it more? Maybe think about that from a public course perspective, semi-private or private. Does that matter? But the world is fairly split on this one. So I'm curious to know, for this Golf Tech Corner, who listens to music, who thinks it's a good idea on the golf course, and who absolutely hates it and why. But with that, we'll wrap up for the week. And, really excited about what I saw today, or what I saw yesterday in the play, and the attitudes of all the young men and women that participated in the NCAA tournament. And of course, with golf, we have all these great examples and things that we'll talk about going forward. And as we get in the golf season, get ready to get those golf conversations going, and who knows what will come up for everything else. But really excited, and happy you guys are joining me. Please remember to like, follow, share. And for any of your golf needs, golf instruction needs, apparel needs, please go to dnagolfinstruction.com. Thanks for watching.